All right, happy Wednesday and welcome to your Newsmax Daily for January 29th, 2025, the fifth and final Wednesday of the month. National Puzzle Day, if you're looking for something to do, and National Corn Chip Day. I hope your day is going well. It is also the start of the Chinese New Year. On the 40th day of winter, another storm is brewing for the Arkansas, Texas, Louisiana area today and tonight, moving east tomorrow and into the northeast with rain. California finally had some much-needed rain, helping with the wildfires there, but now there are concerns of mudslides. Let's not forget about our fellow Americans, the people of California there, and what they are dealing with. In Washington, D.C., the White House released a press release last night titled Debunking Latest Fake News Hoaxes. That begins with this. President Donald J. Trump has been subjected to more manufactured fake news hoaxes than any president in history, and it hasn't gotten any better in his second term. Here are just a few. Hoax. Senator Chris Murphy, Representative Jasmine Crockett, and media outlets claim President Trump's directive to pause radical, wasteful government spending means an end to Medicaid, food assistance, and other individual assistance programs. Fact. Individual federal assistance programs such as Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, SNAP, and other important programs are explicitly excluded, and was made clear by Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt and a memo from the Office of Management and Budget. That's the OMB. And I continue reading. Only unnecessary spending such as DEI, the Green New Scam, and funding non-governmental organizations that undermine the national interest are included in President Trump's directive. That is the first of the three hoaxes outlined in the press release, which I posted on X if you want to check it out at radio_Marino. This is Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt explaining it in her very first briefing live on Newsmax, the first briefing of the new Trump administration, which is one of the many big stories.
While I vow to provide the truth from this podium, we ask that all of you in this room hold yourselves to that same standard. We know for a fact there have been lies that have been pushed by many legacy media outlets in this country about this president, about his family, and we will not accept that. We will call you out when we feel that your reporting is wrong or there is misinformation about this White House. So, yes, I will hold myself to the truth, and I expect everyone in this room to do the same.
And Caroline, just on a substantive question, yesterday, the White House Office of Management and Budget directed across the board freeze, with some exceptions for individual assistance, we understand, to federal grants. It's caused a lot of confusion around the country among Head Start providers, among providers services to homeless veterans, Medicaid providers, states saying they're having trouble accessing the portal. Could you help us clear up some of the confusion, give some certainty to folks? And also, is that uncertainty, how does that uncertainty service the president's voters?
Well, I think there's only uncertainty in this room amongst the media. There's no uncertainty in this building. So let me provide the certainty and the clarity that all of you need. This is not a blanket pause on federal assistance and grant programs from the Trump administration. Individual assistance, that includes, I'm not naming everything that's included, but just to give you a few examples, Social Security benefits, Medicare benefits, food stamps, welfare benefits, assistance that is going directly to individuals will not be impacted by this pause. And I want to make that very clear to any Americans who are watching at home who may be a little bit confused about some of the media reporting. This administration, if you are receiving individual assistance from the federal government, you will still continue to receive that. However, it is the responsibility of this president and this administration to be good stewards of taxpayer dollars. That is something that President Trump campaigned on. That's why he has launched DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, who is working alongside OMB. And that's why OMB sent out this memo last night, because the president signed an executive order directing OMB to do just this. And the reason for this is to ensure that every penny that is going out the door is not conflicting with the executive orders and actions that this president has taken. So what does this pause mean? It means no more funding for illegal DEI programs. It means no more funding for the Green New scam that has cost American taxpayers tens of billions of dollars. It means no more funding for transgenderism and wokeness across our federal bureaucracy and agencies. No more funding for Green New Deal social engineering policies. Again, people who are receiving individual assistance, you will continue to receive that. And President Trump is looking out for you by issuing this pause because he is being good steward of your taxpayer dollars.
That is the new White House press sec, Karoline Leavitt, who you know worked as a spokesperson for the Trump campaign and at 27 years old is the youngest White House press secretary ever. And she did a fantastic job yesterday. A federal judge did halt the president's freeze on federal aid programs, however, until 5 p.m. on February 3rd, saying that the courts need more time to consider the potentially far-reaching ramifications of his order. Trump also signed an executive order to end federal support for gender transitions for people under 19. The order says the federal government will not fund, sponsor, promote, assist, or support gender-affirming care for children. He is now also offering buyouts for many of the federal workers that he wants to get rid of. For more on President Trump and yesterday's news conference, we go to Rob Finnerty.
For the first time in 4 years, America has a real commander-in-chief. Not some guy with Alzheimer's who was forced on all of us 4 years ago, but a man that the rest of the world respects, if for no other reason, because he has a pulse, because he's a man of action, which is a seismic shift from the way things were, not just under Joe Biden, but the way things have been for the last 5 decades. You might remember that Sesame Street song from years ago, which one does not look like the others, and they'd have, 3 things up there, and one of them would be different. I mention that because 8 days ago, when you saw all the former presidents sitting next to each other on stage, Joe Biden next to Bill Clinton, next to George Bush, next to Barack Obama. No Michelle. Where was Michelle? Another story. We'll get to that later. They all look the same to me. They all feel the same. They all did essentially the same thing when they were in the White House. Not much. The only person on that stage that doesn't quite look like the others, and I don't mean this physically, the only one that doesn't belong with that group is Donald Trump. Because everything about Donald Trump is different. And that change was on display once again in the White House briefing room today. Karoline Leavitt, the youngest press secretary in history, 27 years old, held her first briefing today, and she made it clear that the old ways are over.
We're also opening up this briefing room to new media voices who produce news-related content and whose outlet is not already represented by one of the seats in this room.
Independent media are now in the briefing room for the first time in American history. The front row is no longer filled with the same old three-letter legacy networks. They've been pushed out forever, not by the White House, but by you, the American people. And after taking questions from the independent media first, Leavitt went to the legacy media, who are not only predictable, but they are still evidently struggling with why we would ever arrest criminals. Another example of the realignment that I'm talking about. Things have gotten so bad that the White House press corps are now asking the White House press secretary why criminals are being arrested, to the point where the White House press secretary thought it was important to describe in detail many of the crimes that just a handful of the 4,000 illegal aliens that have been arrested so far have been charged with.
On January 23rd, ICE New York arrested a Turkish national for entry without inspection who is a known or suspected terrorist. ICE San Francisco arrested a citizen of Mexico unlawfully present in the United States who has been convicted of continuous sexual abuse of a child. ICE St. Paul has arrested a citizen of Honduras who was convicted of fourth-degree criminal sexual conduct with a minor. ICE Boston arrested a citizen of the Dominican Republic who has a criminal conviction for second-degree murder. This criminal was convicted of murder for beating his pregnant wife to death.
It also might not surprise you to learn that the woman who asked Donald Trump Karoline Leavitt, why the administration is arresting criminal illegal aliens, asked her a question after Karoline Leavitt described their crimes. So she just did that and laid out all of the crimes that some of these people have committed. And she still asked this question. And I'm wondering if you've ever had a question in your mind that you've been ready to ask somebody, and then somebody asks the question you were going to ask, right? Then you have to think of another question. What sane person would ask the same question? Well, that's what you just saw. Karoline Leavitt described in detail what these criminals have done while they've been here in the U.S., raping, murdering, stealing, and that woman still asked why they are being arrested. And this is going to continue for the next 4 years. And wouldn't you know it, after answering why criminals are being arrested, the new White House press secretary was asked the very same question again, this time by someone else sitting in the front row who works for one of those three-letter networks. I'm telling you, these people are out of their minds.
That is Rob Finnerty, and this is too good not to play it if you didn't catch the whole White House press briefing yesterday.
NBC News has learned that ICE arrested 1,179 undocumented immigrants on Sunday, but nearly half of them, 566 of the migrants, appear to have no prior criminal record besides entering the country illegally. Is the president still focused exclusively, which is a civil crime, it's not criminal?
It's a federal crime.
So I'm asking, though, he said he was going to focus on those violent offenders first. So is violent offenders no longer the predicate for these people to be deported?
The president has said countless times on the campaign trail, I've been with him at the rallies, I know you've been there covering them too, Peter, that he is focused on launching the largest mass deportation operation in American history of illegal criminals. And if you are an individual, a foreign national, who illegally enters the United States of America, you are, by definition, a criminal. And so therefore, you are subject to deportation.
So Karoline mentioned him by name, so I don't need to give you his name, and he said NBC News. As their ratings continue to decline, they still won't acknowledge the fact that if you enter the country illegally, then you broke the law, as she said. You are then, therefore, a criminal. If you enter the country illegally, hence the word illegally, without documentation, that is a crime. If you commit a crime, you're a criminal. Pretty simple, Peter. And I actually like him. And remember yesterday, I said ICE agents must be so happy now that they're finally getting to do their job, right?
From what we hear on the ground, ICE agents are feeling incredibly empowered right now because they actually have a leader in this building who is supporting them in doing their jobs that they were hired to do, which is to detain, arrest, and deport illegal criminals who have invaded our nation's borders over the past 4 years. That's what the president is committed to seeing.
Okay, let's go back to Finnerty, who says some reporters are not the only ones asking dumb questions. And then we'll hear from new DHS Secretary Kristi Noem, who's on the ground with her team in New York City.
Meanwhile, Donald Trump continues at a pace that we've never seen before. In the last 24 hours, the president has reinstated military members who were forced out over the COVID-19 vaccine. He eliminated DEI in the military formally, mandated a process to develop an American Iron Dome that can defend Americans against drone attacks, and committed to eliminating income taxes. Doesn't that seem like something maybe you'd ask about, eliminating income taxes? But Democrats in Congress want to focus on eggs. Typically, I would say egghead. I'm not going to do that. I'm better than that. I'm smarter than that. I can come up with something better than that. It hasn't come to me yet. But little Lizzie Warren, Massachusetts senator, and her colleagues sent a really strong-worded letter to Donald Trump demanding to know why grocery prices, specifically eggs, have not come down, writing, quote, "We write to ask about your administration's plan to lower food prices for American families. You have tools you can use to lower grocery costs and crack down on corporate profiteering, and we write to ask if you will commit to using these tools to make good on your promises to the American people." What a letter, Liz. What a letter. Brilliant stuff right there. She taught at Harvard. It shows in that letter. That was smart. I guess I'm just sort of wondering why Lizzie Warren didn't send that exact same letter to Joe Biden every day over the last 4 years. Because grocery prices are high, and they are still high because of Joe Biden. That's not conjecture. That's not a lie. It's not ballyhoo. That's a fact. I swear, if these people were smart, they'd run the world. Thankfully, they are not. They are not. And I'm wondering why grocery prices are the top of Democrats' list of things to do right now and criticize Donald Trump for, to the point where back in the briefing room, someone there asked Karoline Leavitt about eggs, again in the White House briefing room.
There is a lot of reporting out there that is putting the onus on this White House for the increased cost of eggs. I would like to point out to each and every one of you that in 2024, when Joe Biden was in the Oval Office, or upstairs in the residence sleeping, I'm not so sure, egg prices increased 65% in this country. We also have seen the cost of everything, not just eggs. Bacon, groceries, gasoline have increased because of the inflationary policies of the last administration.
Okay, so once again, political scientists would call what we're seeing right now a realignment. Politics, the media, America. And in the White House briefing room, there's been a major realignment because over the last 4 years, the briefing room hasn't been used for briefing the American public. It's been a room of lies, of hate, of gaslighting, and propaganda.
Again, that is Rob Finnerty, host of Finnerty, 8 p.m. Eastern. Our new Department of Homeland Security, DHS Secretary Kristi Noem, spoke with her agency's employees about the mission going forward.
I am so thrilled to be a part of the family at the United States Department of Homeland Security. Your mission is big and it's vast, and I know that you approach it with the seriousness of which the day and age that we live in requires. So just know that I am committed to fulfilling our mission with you and walking alongside all of you as you do your work every day to make sure that not only do you accomplish your job and do it with excellence, but that you have the assurance that your families will be safe also, and that we leave this country safe for our kids and our grandkids far into the future. Now, as Secretary, that's my responsibility, but it also is my responsibility to do everything that I can to give you the resources that you need to do your job. You need the training, you need the equipment and the resources to make sure you're prepared for every single situation you find yourself in. Now, my background and experience is in business. It's also in serving at the state legislative level. I served in Congress, and I also have served as governor. But that experience tells me that if you want people to perform with excellence, you have to equip and prepare them to do so. And that is my commitment to all of you, that we will walk through every single situation together, and I'll prepare you as much as I can for it, and we'll have the flexibility to make sure that we can always keep the American people first and foremost. I am thrilled that President Trump trusted me with this job. And I'll tell all of you that the reason that he trusted me with this job is because when he talked to me about what my future looked like, I asked him for it. I said, I would like to be the Secretary of Homeland Security, sir, because it's your #1 priority. And I love my job as governor of South Dakota. I love my home and my family. I would not leave them to spend time away unless I was doing something of significance. That's the family I was raised in, that we talked every day about the fact that our work should matter and it should have a purpose, and we should be able to explain why we do what we do, and that it has something that we can show the next generation that really mattered for their future and for this country. So today, I'm hoping all of us will be a beacon of freedom, of light, and of hope, that when people look at us, they don't just see people who are there in a time of crisis or conflict, but we're also people that bring a smile to people's faces and remind them what America is about. You're on the front lines many times, but you're also sometimes the last ones in to help pick up the pieces. And you see people on their very worst days. But that is a presence that you can bring that will bring them comfort and stability in a time when their whole world seems to be shaken. Now, I grew up as a farmer and a rancher. I told this story to a few people the first day that I came into the office, that I grew up with a dad who was a cowboy. And he was much like you would picture John Wayne was in his Westerns. He lived hard and fast, and when he sent us off to school, we obviously lived in the country, we had to drive. He said, drive fast and take chances. So there's not a lot of people that have dads like that. But he also told us every day to get out of bed because more people die in bed than anywhere else. And so we knew that when we got up, we got to work and we worked together as a family. But that also taught me a lot about how you need to live your example, and an example in front of the people that you lead of what you want them to do, but they also could respect you in the process of being in front of that organization.
DHS Secretary and former South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem, who posted videos with her team making arrests in New York City in the middle of the night. I think I retweeted some of those, but you can check them out all over the place. This is New York Congresswoman Nicole Maliotakis on Wake Up America this morning.
New York Congresswoman Nicole Maliotakis. Congresswoman, great to see you this morning. So ICE has been busy this past week, and now you're seeing them here in New York. What did you make of yesterday's raids?
Look, what a difference an election, a president can make here. We have been begging for this type of intervention for years. And let's be clear, Joe Biden let in these individuals, even if they had a criminal record. They were released into our interior, and then they come to New York City. They were living in a luxury hotel room at the expense of taxpayers. And this election changed everything. And with President Trump's leadership and Kristi Noem as the head of DHS, we are seeing a massive shift here where the focus is actually on national security and public safety. They have removed so many dangerous, violent criminals and gang members off of the streets of New York and other cities across this country. They even caught somebody who was from the Dominican Republic who committed 2 murders in his home country. He was removed off the streets of New York City as well yesterday. So this is incredible to see this type of early action in this administration. President Trump is doing exactly what he said he would do, and it's exactly what my constituents want. They do not want foreign criminals and gang members roaming the streets, wreaking havoc in our city, and then doing it all at taxpayer expense.
Yeah,
Congresswoman, so Newsmax spoke to a man who lives in the apartment complex that ICE raided, and he says he's relieved because living with them was, quote, like hell.
It's kind of been like hell because when I first came, the apartment was like broken open, and then like I saw them moving in, the entire family, and like they were moving in like old furniture and like old refrigerators, and then like bringing wood in to like repair the apartment and fix it themselves. How they got access, I have no clue. But then they brought it was like, once 2 or 3 moved in, it was like all of a sudden there was 10, a lot of children, which was odd. And they were always like here in the front smoking weed and stuff of that nature.
I mean, this is the president doing what he said he was going to do. The left still doesn't get it. I mean, these are your constituents that are saying, thank you. You heard us.
Exactly. And remember when Joe Biden lied to the American people and told us that he needed Congress to pass a law to actually secure the borders and rid our cities of these criminals? That was absolutely untrue. He created the crisis via executive order, and Donald Trump undid it. via executive order. And Congress did pass multiple bills, by the way, to secure our border, provide more technology, hire more agents for our Border Patrol. And Chuck Schumer let it sit on his desk and refused to allow it for a vote. So this was a good resolution here that we have this Republican trifecta. We're seeing things get done. Today, the president will sign the Laken-Riley Act, which is important legislation that also puts an emphasis on detaining and deporting criminals. Let's be clear, Laken-Riley would be alive today if New York, my city, unfortunately, did not release her murderer after a prior arrest, but it's because of these left-wing policies at the city and state, the bail law, which is an automatic get-out-of-jail-free card. You get released right back onto the street, maybe hours before you're arrested. Yeah. And then the sanctuary policy, which did not turn this individual over to ICE as they should have. That person went on to Georgia, killed Laken-Riley, 100% preventable, and we're glad that President Trump will be signing this law, but it should have never gotten to this point. This should have never been necessary. The Biden administration and cities like mine should have been working together to stop these dangerous people from not only entering our country, but when they did commit a crime, to immediately deport them.
New York Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis on Wake Up America earlier today. One of the other many big stories, big headlines, is the ongoing confirmation hearings on Capitol Hill. Today, former Democrat turned independent RFK Jr. will go before the Senate in his nomination for Health and Human Services Secretary. Yesterday, Kennedy's cousin, Karoline Kennedy, right? And this is like, or was, it either is or was like the royal family of the United States, right? A former U.S. ambassador, Karoline Kennedy, wrote a brutal letter to the Senate calling her cousin, Robert Kennedy Jr., a predator, saying, quote, "It's no surprise he keeps birds of prey as pets because Bobby himself is a predator." End quote. She says he led family members down a path of substance abuse. His basement, the garage, his dorm room always had drugs, and that he is completely unqualified. Robert Kennedy, hasn't really specifically addressed the letter, but we go back to Wake Up America and Charlotte McBride, who spoke with North Dakota Senator Kevin Cramer, who expressed confidence in Robert Kennedy Jr., as well as Tulsi Gabbard and Kash Patel.
Not on the committees that we'll hear from RFK Jr., Kash Patel, or Tulsi Gabbard this week, but obviously your vote is a very important one when it comes to the Senate floor. Do you have any doubt about any of those three?
I really don't. It's interesting. Tulsi and I were classmates in the House. In fact, her and Kristi were pretty good friends in the House. And of course, she was a Democrat. And so I know her pretty well. I think she's got the right stuff. There's some concern, obviously, among Republicans for anybody who a few months ago was a Democrat. But I rather like conversion stories. And I think in the case of RFK, politically speaking, he brought a lot of people to the Trump votes, I believe. And I have some daughters and a wife who really, really appreciate his advocacy for health and for good nutrition. And while they're sort of out of the box picks, Donald Trump's an out-of-the-box president, and I just think they're going to be fine. They're very convincing when you meet them in person as well, and that's the big thing, is that they take the time to meet with senators, not just on the committee, but other senators, and forge relationships and become accessible. And the biggest thing for senators is not so much, philosophy matters, but it's less about that and more about access and transparency and a working relationship on developing policies and being quick to respond to requests for information. And that's something we have not had for a very long time. And both Republican and Democratic senators will tell you that the last administration was not very transparent with Congress.
That's North Dakota Senator Kevin Cramer on Newsmax's Wake Up America. So the questioning of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to be the Director of Health and Human Services is happening right now. A Kennedy in a Republican administration. Tomorrow, Tulsi Gabbard, as Senator Cramer said, a former Democratic presidential candidate turned Republican for Director of National Intelligence, and former Trump administration member, FBI Director nominee Kash Patel. That's happening tomorrow. Kennedy's happening right now. So we will be watching Capitol Hill as the world continues to watch the White House. And that is not an overstatement. The world is watching to see what Trump is going to do next. And again, the pause that everybody's talking about on all the federal funds has been delayed until February 3rd. And no, it doesn't affect Medicare, Medicaid, SNAP, and all these other services. The pilot of a U.S. F-35 fighter jet is in stable condition after ejecting from the $85 million aircraft before it crashed during a training exercise in Alaska. This is the 354th Fighter Wing Commander, Colonel Paul Townsend.
The pilot did declare an in-flight emergency prior to what ended up being the crash of the aircraft.
On Wall Street, stocks opened mostly flat this morning after rallying back from Monday's sell-off yesterday to finish higher. All eyes are on Tesla today, which will report earnings this afternoon. Shareholders are said to have some questions about Elon Musk's involvement in the Trump administration. All eyes are also on the Federal Reserve. Fed Chair Jerome Powell is scheduled to speak this afternoon, and like I always say, anything could happen after that, so keep an eye on your stuff. It'll really be interesting to see what happens between him and President Trump if he should start putting the kibosh on the markets. But with all of the news and all the breaking developments, because there will be plenty of them once again today on Newsmax N2 and at Newsmax.com. It all begins each and every day with Wake Up America, followed by National Report. Rob Schmidt, Finnerty, Greg Kelly, The Right Squad, Ed Henry, Chris Salcedo, and many others, John Bachman and more. Make sure you're streaming on Newsmax Plus as well so you get it all. I'm Tony Marino. Thanks for checking out the Newsmax Daily. Share it with your friends and family. Enjoy the rest of your day and keep on fighting the good fight.
News breaks every minute, every day. You need the app, the Newsmax app. Find it free on your smartphone store. Then watch us anytime, anywhere.
Information. Truth. Is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.